Activist here.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry.
So we have a motion to open the meeting.
I will make a motion to open the meeting.
I'll second. 10 seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of minutes. But as was just pointed out to me, there was two different documents that got merged in a funny, they came through in a funny way. So they have to be separated and updated. So we'll put those approvals off to the next meeting. That's okay with everybody? Okay. Do you need to take a vote on that? No. Okay. There are no possible extensions or abandonments of applications. The next thing is public hearings. We have 6 Gumwood and 8 Gumwood Drive. The applicant's attorney has asked us to postpone until May 20th. Do we need to make a motion on that, or just, okay, so do you have a motion to postpone this to May 20th?
Motion.
Second.
And Bob seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. The next is 35 and 39 Everett Road. The applicant requests an interpretation that 1 zoning codes, sections 97-59B1 and 4 are applicable to and enforceable against the operations occurring at 39 Everett, and 2 zoning code section 97-47 does not prohibit the applicant to and/or enforce sections 97-59B1 and B4 of the zoning code against 39 Everett Road, because under the circumstances, said applicant and/or enforcement would not result in an unreasonable restriction or regulation of farm operations at 39 Everett. So, we'll need a
Motion
motion to open that.
Motion to open
Sam?
the public hearing.
We have a
Second.
Jimmy seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, members of the board. Matt Behrens, Aaron Steinmetz, filling in for Jody Cross, who was here last meeting with this matter, and good to see everyone. I'm here on behalf of the owners, Carrie Boo and Sean Boo of 35 Everett. We're here because, as you said, we're requesting an interpretation, essentially that a very broad regulation around legitimate ag-related activities, and not to overly burden legitimate ag-related activities, is not applicable to this clear situation here. The neighbor at 39 Everett has a very large property. There's a ton of other space to put this storage, these chicken coops, all this stuff that has been essentially targetedly put at the immediate boundary line at Sean and Carrie's line, in an attempt to vex them, to harass them, all that. But what's most important here is that this is a ginormous property. There's other places to put this stuff. It does not have to be at the immediate boundary line. It's causing significant and ongoing harm to the applicants here, to Carrie and Sean, sorry. And it's been many months of this, almost a year of this kind of behavior, and we're here because this is, to us, such a clear-cut violation of the zoning code. And all we're asking the zoning board to do is to tell the code enforcement officer that he's allowed to do his job, which is find that outdoor storage without screening at commercial vehicles unrelated to agriculture operations cannot be parked in a immediate boundary line between a residential property. So if there's no immediate questions, I'll turn it over to Carrie to speak to just how difficult the situation has been personally on the resident owners, and how it's been very targeted from the neighbor here. Is there any immediate questions from the board, or any thoughts that I can address immediately?
Not yet. I'd like to wait to hear from her before I ask any.
Hi, I wasn't anticipating speaking tonight. So we've been on our property for 19 years. We moved to it because it's very rural, it's very secluded, it's very quiet, and had beautiful old growth trees. And it's kind of the blend Brooklyn, upstate girl. This is our happy medium. We had a falling out with the neighbors, and since then, I have had more property destruction. My front property, my front yard is 711 feet to the road. When you took out the fence, it looked like I had a racetrack around my front property. We took out the fence to about the width of 30 feet by 50 feet down on the leach field with an excavator. We had a ton of old growth trees removed, even after having shared surveys to relay that these are in fact our trees. All of the buffer trees and the shrubs that we have between the properties have been removed. I know that's not part and parcel for this zoning enforcement, but since I do have a septic truck parked exactly on my fence line, we no longer access our backyard where we put a huge fire pit. We have a koi pond. We spent a lot of money because we like spending time outside. We no longer do that. We have trucks constantly to the point the cars are covered in dust. And when we had we were just sitting outside having a good time one night, and we had a generator with a floodlight brought down and put right on us at the property line. We have now electric lines on the fence line, signs every 10 inches or so that they walked on our property to install facing us. So to look at the sliding door in my kitchen is just exasperating because we worked very hard for this house. We restored this house, we put a lot of love in this house, we raised our child in this house, and it no longer feels like home. Now we stay later and later at work because we're just so harassed. I am here to please ask that you enforce the zoning, get these ridiculous trucks off of my property line, and if you can see it in your hearts to please, put in a buffer area and have those shrubs or trees replanted, that would be fabulous. Thank you for your time.
Oh, hi, excuse me, Sean Bell. Sorry for being late. There's a little bit of police activity outside right now. I wanted to ask everyone here, does anyone need to recluse themselves from this? I know that Rory had to. Is everybody here okay?
I believe we'd be here if we couldn't.
Oh, no,
Yes.
I'm just
Yeah.
double, triple checking. This is puerile. This is hubris. This is a public nuisance. We're talking about a farm that did not exist 5 years ago. This is not some antebellum farm. This is 37 acres of land that was cleared for a gentleman's farm. Maybe it's not in line. Maybe there's too many horses, maybe there's too many cows. Not my problem. We're talking about a fence. We're talking about a vendetta. We're talking about the absolute systemic, pervasive and systemic denial of use of property for a simple reason of a grudge. When asked, what is he going to do? Tony said, I won't pay the fines. You may rule that we're correct. You may fine Stone Silent Farm. He won't pay it. There's no teeth to it. What is $500, $5,000 to Tony LaSpinara? Nothing. What I'm getting at is, how is this a farm? What do they produce? Do they raise unicorns? Pegasus? Kozlowski horses, the missing link between the Pleistocene and today? No, they do not. There is no agricultural business whatsoever. This is a gentleman's farm. And the idea that as a farmer, as an ag exempt, how that happened, I'm going to ask you gentlemen, as an agricultural concern, the owner is entitled to do whatever they please under the idea that it's my property. This really has gotten silly. And this has destroyed our quality of life and property value, a separate case entirely. But we're coming to talk about fences, neighbors, doing the right thing. Why do laws exist? There's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. Is it a farm? Yes or no? It's a farm. That means the owner can do whatever they choose. They can stack manure and materials and trucks to deliver, like 37.5 acres, and there's a rooster aimed at my property. For no reason other than to annoy, to upset. And well done, well played. I mean, well played to you. I mean, you have to do a slow golf clap, well done, but truly, honestly, whether it's legal or not, what are we doing? And what are you doing? And what have you done?
We have some photos if the board would like to
This
see.
is literally the property line is the fence, so yes, I'm looking at a concept of correct. Sorry, we're trying to get an iPad for a bigger picture. This is the view from the backyard, multiple box trucks, beautiful multiple box trucks. That is my bushes, that were ripped out. That is me for scale, by the way. I hired a drone because you didn't really get the gist of how much damage was done. Then we have, sorry, I'm very nervous.
Good time.
That was what the shrub looked like, so.
Can you, when showing the picture, just give us the dates of when those pictures were taken?
These, most of them were done in August of 2004.
Okay, and what, if any, changes are there as of today?
We have put in $10,000 of trees on the property line. That's going to take them a while to grow. And that's when we ripped out the fencing. That was necessary on my leach field.
What's the, I don't understand the, you've,
We allowed
fence?
them, yeah, we allowed them to use the front yard for cows at one point. Then there was an issue with aerial trespass, so that cost us $50,000 to correct out of our pockets. So it wasn't getting done quickly enough. They threatened to cut off the electric. I have a daughter with a heart condition who was home for the summer. I need air conditioning and heart monitors. So we had a DPW. It's just been a very fun time. So everything escalated after that. There were threats. They were going to put a lien on the property, move the manure over to the border of the property, X, Y, and Z. So I asked my husband to please have them remove the fence, because if you're threatening lawsuits and this, I don't need that headache. And this is how we remove the fence.
Can you,
Look like a racetrack.
can you slowly give us a breakdown of what civil actions, you mentioned a lien, what other legal or other steps have been taken, legal steps preceding this point?
Most of it was regarding the electric. We had wound up with AMP. They came in, we had to install 2 telephone poles. Central Hudson does the road, O&R does our property, so we had a lot of coordination with that. There's tons of emails, you know.
Actually,
trying to
Carrie,
get
I
that
was,
set up.
if I may. Tony, I don't know if you guys know this, owns TAM Enterprises. Are you aware? Okay, you're aware, good. They do wastewater and electric. And Tony had offered to upgrade my electric. As the electric, there was an overhead trespass rating back to 1960. So while addressing that, TAM came out and did not get surveys. I pay Origin Rockland, but I'm actually belong to Central Hudson. It became a whole, so Tony came out with his trucks and dug a trench, and the trench pretty much went to nowhere. We couldn't hook up the electric because it was not done properly, and my wife had some issues with this, and we wound up using a different electrician. We have a proper electric service now. But Tony got very upset by this, by the, you know, our attitude over it, which is simply, it wasn't done properly. We got it done properly away. And it led to certain tits for tats. There was a tight relationship. This is actually all like a personal fault. This is more of a divorce. And this is why it's him using punitive actions to punish my wife and punish myself for calling him out for doing a substandard illegal job on our property. We did get it up to code. We do have clean running electric. What the cut card's referring to is his daughter, also named Alyssa Laspinera, who sent legal letters to our house. Tony had threatened to put a lien on our house had we not upgraded our electric, which we did. It's completely up to code.
You
But
put it
that
on
left
my
a-
property.
Oh,
You
one
put the
second.
pole on my
May I
property.
burst?
You upgraded.
Let me say something.
Thank you.
This,
So I'm
this is
down.
not a play-by-play of the, hold on,
Right.
this is not a play-by-play of the history. This is a basic just code
Yep.
discussion.
Back at you, Sean.
What we're here for is that this is outdoor storage, this is commercial vehicles, there's clear code provisions that require either setbacks for vehicles or buffering for certain items, and that's what we're here to request an interpretation that Frank, the code enforcement officer, can go out and do his job and see if there's violations, which we strongly believe there are, and to issue the applicable finds and prosecute the process in accordance with the zoning code. That's what we're here tonight.
And can you break that down a little bit more for us?
Sure.
Those elements, I know it's touched upon in your
It's in the cover letter. It's in the cover.
Each of the legal standards, 'cause
Sure.
I'm counting several of them.
So, there's two, right? There's one around outdoor storage and commercial vehicle parking. Section 9759B4 prohibits the parking of commercial vehicles where visible from adjoining properties. There's even a specific accommodation for vehicles used in connection with farm operations, but the owner needs to demonstrate that they are used for legitimate farming operations. And even then, they must be set back 100 feet from the property line.
You're referring to,
9759B4, and that's regards to commercial vehicles. That's one violation. The second is with outdoor storage. 9759B1 requires that outdoor storage be, quote, screened from public view and neighboring properties. Screened from public view and neighboring properties. There's been no effort at screening. In fact, as Carrie mentioned, there was actually the destruction of plants and screening that was previously there. So this outdoor storage on Tony's yard is completely visible from the Booz property. It's right at the immediate boundary line. So those are two clear to us, clear zoning code violations. When we brought this up with Frank and asked him to go out there and issue to investigate and issue investigation and violation, he said there's a code provision that doesn't allow unreasonable restrictions on farming operations. We think that is absolutely bogus. These are nothing to do with legitimate farming operations, and even if they were, requiring the buffering or requiring the setback of commercial farming vehicles does not harm his any, quote, legitimate farming operations. It's a ginormous property. So we're here to basically tell Frank that he can go out and do his job because it's not an unreasonable restriction.
look, can you break that last part down a little bit more? The application, just as your letter says, between 9784, the definition sections regarding the farming operation. I believe one of your clients suggested that this is not. I'd like to hear about that, as well as how that it applies to 9747F as to why that presumption of protection wouldn't apply here.
First of all, because it's such a big property, there's no harm to.
Well, please, if you would just, because going over, can you start
Sure.
first with what your client was talking about, 9784,
Sure.
the farming operation? Is it your position that this is not a farming operation? But I'll turn it over, that was one of the questions I thought.
It's our position that enforcing these two basic code provisions that apply to his property is not an unreasonable restriction on his farming operations. That's our
I understand
position.
that's your position, but before we get to that question, I'm trying to confirm whether, is it your position that this is not a farming operation sufficient that we wouldn't even look at 9747?
Well, we can talk about that, but let's start with maybe the commercial vehicles. Are those farming? I think we should all be on the same page. Are these vehicles legitimate farming related vehicles or not? I think we can start there.
Right.
Kara, if you have more photos you care to share, I'm very sorry that we didn't have a better multimedia experience for you, but we're talking about a dumpster. There was until recently a septic vehicle labeled TAM. When I asked Tony why he's parking a septic vehicle there, I said, I'll simply say I'm going to use it to spread water. Okay, septic tank is gone. There's a semi, a dumpster, and a bunch of fence material right up against my property for the simple reason that we had a falling out. They haven't moved in months. In fact, if it were still frozen, I don't know if they would actually move because they've been there for months over the winter. Sitting there fallow, not moving, not operating, not being loaded, not being transported, simply stored there. That we can prove with photos.
Address the equipment, your position as to what, how you characterize.
The vehicles.
The vehicles are sitting there fallow, yes.
But is it your position that the property, because the definition under 9784 includes the word land, is it your position that the property in question, 39 Everett, is not a farm?
They,
It's-
the applicants would feel strongly.
That begins,
I know that's not always
that's more of
the role here,
interpretation. I'm sure it is
but
legally a farm,
Our
but
point
Yeah.
is that even if it is considered a farm in the land, applying those two basic code provisions, because of the size of the property and the nature of the quote farming operations, is not some unreasonable, burdensome denial of the neighbor's rights.
So
That's our
let's talk
position.
about that, because that's 9747F, which just as you refers to unreasonably restricts or regulates. So
Right.
what facts, flesh out please a little more for the board, what
This,
facts you're
this,
basing that?
first, the size of the property. This is not the only place someone can store items for commercial vehicles. It's really not. And as you heard, there's obviously some backdrop with a breakdown of neighborly relations, which would point even more to the fact that he's putting it there not for commercial farming operation reasons, not for legitimate farming operations reasons. He's putting that stuff there in an effort to vex, to harass. It just proves our point that there's other land to use for legitimate farming operations. It doesn't have to be at this immediate boundary line. I mean, is that resonating
I
with
guess
the,
we're saying, other than the size of the
Right.
property, anything else that you're relying upon?
just the nature of what's being stored there? The nature of there aren't, it isn't some, well thought out farming infrastructure that needs to be placed there, that had an engineer come in and that was the most advantageous place on the property to be put there. That was deliberately put because it's right where Carrie and Sean can see it from their windows. It wasn't some well thought out plan. To me, this is just a clear case of neighborly harassment. We've looked at other options. This is just a clear zoning code violation to us. We're just asking that Frank's able to do his job. And no one's playing favorites. And I know no one here wants even the perception of playing favorites, but to me, an attorney that sees these zoning codes in other municipalities as well, it's pretty clear cut. The code enforcement officer has an obligation to go out and investigate and prosecute accordingly. If there's any other questions regarding that, is there anything else on why
No, that
it doesn't
seems succinct.
seem like that's a legitimate farming? I think that's where we're at this point.
Are there any other residences around this property?
Yes, and butts against all of those housing complexes in the
John
back
Street.
property. I
believe there are 8.
Ruby Lane, John Street, all of that is in the back. It is between our property at 35, and then there's another neighbor with cows in his yard as well.
So would moving this around the property, this 38 acres you
There is,
mentioned, will it be on somebody else's problem?
No, there's a big
Lou?
gap. If you go up by the barn area, that's where the trucks always were stored, have been stored. It's a level ground next to the barn. And I don't know why that can't be utilized. It's just woods on all sides, with the exception of the barn.
Frank, do you mind if I ask you what your interpretation of the breakdown from the applicant's attorney is, and if he accurately described your
Yeah, so,
view?
okay, yes, yeah, thank you. Frank Love, the building inspector. So we talked about a lot of stuff here tonight. A lot of it, in my world, is irrelevant for this neighbor thing. I'm here to enforce the code. And so in their packet, they're citing some sections of Chapter 97, right? That's the zoning code, Chapter 97. When I read the code, I go to Section 97-47, it's the protection and regulation of agriculture, right? You read that whole section, and you go to that Section 97-47F. And yeah, we're talking about the unreasonable restriction. I think it's discretionary. It's a tough thing to handle. Who's to say it's unreasonable? They're saying it's unreasonable, but you have to also think about the farmer, the landowner. And James made a good point. Where are you going to put it? It's going to be a headache for somebody else. So my job is to enforce the code. In 9747F, I'll read it. It's a paragraph. Application of zoning regulations to farm operations pursuant to 305A of the Ag and Markets Law. This chapter, which is 97, shall not be administered or interpreted in a manner that unreasonably restricts or regulates farm operations within agricultural districts, unless it can be shown that the public health or safety is threatened. I think that's a key piece here too. Any provision of this chapter which violates 305A, that's the Ag and Markets Law, shall be deemed to have no effect as applied to such farm operations. That's a pretty big umbrella of protection. So I think the crux of this is the unreasonable restriction.
And that's what I was struggling with, Counselor.
Right.
'Cause it almost seems as though your position, and almost like your client said she wasn't sure, is almost speculation.
It's not speculation, actually. They had their first call in
Stay with me, we'll
April.
take turns forward. Almost creating an inference that by virtue of the size of the property, there has to be a different place to put it. Ergo, it's gotta be, it can't be unreasonably obstructed because there's so many other places to put it, right? That's kind of a characterization.
That's
of what
one
I'm hearing.
piece. The other piece is, can we all just get on the same page whether or not these are legitimate farming related vehicles and key to a commercial farming operation? Can we just first get on the same page about that? I'm not even sure we're all in this agreement of that, about that.
I'm not sure that Ag and Market, the right to farm law differentiates between commercial and maybe, a farm that's sort of subsistence farming. So I'm not sure that the commercial part is.
I guess even
not-
subsistence, I just want us to all be on the same page that these aren't just random things or equipment or vehicles that can be claimed as farming related, but really aren't. That's what I think that's step one.
Frank, code on the fact that this is commercially noted on these trucks, obviously knowing
Yeah, so I,
this type of business they do, wouldn't that alone?
for the record, I spoke to Mr. Las Cranera on 2 occasions. He assured me that that septic truck has been removed, even though he did claim it was for watering his livestock, his whatever. He uses it for water only for the farm, even though it says septic, what have you. Not sure if that even applies here. But nevertheless, it's not on the property line. With that being said, who's to say it's not gonna be there in a couple of months and we're gonna have the same conversation? I think the code is discretionary. I still have to go with the Ag and Markets Law. I've dealt with them on other cases for different matters. And I think there's a case here. Even if the ZBA here sided with the Bows, and I did take it to court, we could very well be challenged at that court if Ag and Markets were to weigh in. Just want to put that on the record.
So, Frank, I understand only real concern if there's a permanent structure along the side, because we're looking at the side lot here. So it's not a permanent structure, so these items that could be removed or moved at any given time, so how can we enforce that? Who enforces something like that?
It's tough. I'm not gonna go there every week, every day and see what's parked there.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, it's
usually
not a
driven
permanent
by-
structure, so we can't enforce something that can be moved tomorrow 20 feet or 100 feet.
Right.
Is it there today, as we,
Yes.
or was it
Yes.
moved?
Not the septic truck, I guess there are vehicles. They are on the fenced line, they're about 40 feet off the fence
They
line.
moved.
But the rooster's still there, the wood pile's still there, the dumpster's still there, the signage is still there.
So let's take any one of those, right? Even if you found that to be farming related, and this is a discussion with the board, how can we find that that's, to move those in accordance with the black letter law of the zoning code? Moving those or requiring just buffering, because that's what the code requires for outdoor storage, requiring buffering or screening. How is that gonna be an unreasonable restriction on Tony's farming operations? That I think is the next piece then. How is that unreasonable if we're asking for certain trucks to be moved back 100 feet, non-farming related to trucks to be not there because that's the code, or outdoor storage of things like chicken coops and wood chips to just be properly screened? Because the code makes clear, the code is trying to minimize externalities, this is clearly creating externalities. So how,
And it was screened. It would not be a big deal, except they illegally removed all of the screening.
Can I ask a question about that very
Sure.
quickly? there's a ton of other things beside the specific facts of what's going on in this application.
Yes, correct.
You're claiming that there was value lost, legitimate damage to your property. Have you considered pursuing a civil action?
This is
and
all
that?
predicated on this. Yeah, we're waiting to hear what you guys
We
say,
spent
but yes.
$50,000 on deal left. We've spent, we're kind of scarce.
There's cause to civil action
We're waiting on
versus,
civil action based on.
versus a
stuff.
zoning code
Yeah.
violation, which, right, there's a ZBA, a wonderful ZBA, that's part of why you have a ZBA, why you have a code enforcement officer. Citizens don't need to hire outside counsel, spend all this money, go through the civil, long court system in New York. They can they can have the black letter law be applied by their code enforcement officer, by the town. So it's expensive, there's other claims. This is also one of the claims, which is a zoning code violation, which is why we're here today.
Understood. I just was curious. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think these things have to be on back-to-back tracks. They could be on, I was just
It's
curious
more
whether or not
the
it was
cost
an
of
avenue to
litigation
go
is
through.
the cost of litigation alone is so expensive. And from the neighbors posturing, letters and requests to meet and things like that really don't have an effect. So,
I do think there's I know that we've been showing pictures today, and at times I think there is, for my sake, some information. It's I'd like to see someone come out with I'd like to see this actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been provided, but a mapping of the specific items right now that would be asked for, and just I'd like to see that.
It's again, it's more what your board's role is to say to Frank is that to apply a buffering or screening provision is not an unreasonable restriction. I mean, let's get back to that. That's what Frank was citing with the overly broad, you can't do anything that unreasonably restricts the farming operations. Okay, we got that. I'm just, again, getting on the same page. I can't see how requiring a farming truck to be moved 100 feet back or requiring Tony to put planters or screening somehow overly restricts his farming operations. I fail to see that. And that's what I think we're here tonight to discuss, that it's not unreasonable to apply what the zoning code provisions say to do when there's farming and a residence as there is here.
And do you have a position as to whose burden it is that would be required to demonstrate that, the unreasonable restriction?
Well, it would be, I mean, it's a discussion we should all be having. Tony should, the neighbor should obviously
Well,
be able.
because if I'm just, to the extent it was your burden, I'm not saying, I'm just trying to,
Right.
it would be part of your application. So go on.
Sure, I believe we put a bunch of information for this board. I know you guys can make a reasonable conclusion here. If you're looking for more information, I think in terms of fact finding, I think it would be to ask the neighbor about the legitimate farming operations and to assess whether putting a buffering screen up is really going to harm unreasonably those legitimate commercial operations, take farming operations. That's all we're asking. And I think the board has more than enough to ask us, to ask the neighbor, and to look at our materials to make that decision.
I'm curious what you think, Robert. The way you're telling me that you're interpreting the unreasonable restriction language is that in application here, it wouldn't be that. Doesn't it have to be the code provision itself that you would be taking to us to ask to
So-
view that as unreasonable, not the application of whatever code provision Frank relied on? You follow me?
Kind of. Say that again.
I would say it's not the application that's unreasonably restrictive, which you're claiming. You'd have to be coming at us saying that there's a specific code provision that is in itself.
Well, it's going to be circumstantial. Yeah, it's going to be circumstantial to someone's land, to their farming
Always.
operation. So
Right, necessarily.
the code is the code. What I'm saying is applied to this situation. What is the role of the code enforcement officer coming to you guys to say, is it actually unreasonable or not? That's what we're here for this board to say to Frank. No, it's not unreasonable to put up a basic screening or buffering as the code requires. It's not going to be unreasonable. Frank can go out and issue those violations because of the code.
What say you to this proposition though? Now, they need to put a screening up over the potential entire property to shield all of it from farming operations, every residential surrounding property.
No,
that
just,
now-
no, just remember, the code says outdoor storage,
I hear you,
buffering for outdoor storage.
I hear you.
So, to me, this is such a clear-cut case of why there's a buffering requirement. No one wants to live and look out their backyard and see deliberately placed stuff that's SHIT that is really just an excuse to vex the neighbors.
For sure. I'm
That's-
sympathetic to the
That's why,
application.
that's why these codes are in place, to minimize that rub and externalities.
Right.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions right now. See if there's other folks from the public that need to speak.
Please.
I'm just concerned on something like this here. I know you have a farm, agriculture, we have a lot of agriculture in the town of Goshen. If we start having neighbors spitting and spatting after one another, are we gonna have to start controlling, putting some type of separation or enforcing stuff like that in the town? We don't have jurisdiction or police to start policing all the properties, no agriculture, and if we have a problem with one neighbor fighting another neighbor, how are we gonna start controlling that? I mean, that's a heck of a precedent that we have to set in our town.
With all due respect, it's in the zoning code, and it's not that unreasonable. The zoning code just says that when there's outdoor storage, it needs to be screened from neighboring properties. It also says if there's farming commercial vehicles, it needs to be set back 100 feet. That to me is not going to, in my opinion, destroy the agricultural landscape of the town. Those are basic, small provisions that really just try to minimize the inherent issues that can come out with farming and residents. That's all it seems to me.
So I'm just wondering if Frank enforces it, he moves his truck or whatever vehicle he has 100 feet this week, and the next week he moves it back 50 feet. How are we gonna enforce stuff like that?
Fines?
I guess with all due respect, wouldn't that be an issue for any code provision, right? If there's a commercial enterprise that is doing something in their backyard that they're trying to get away with, it's the same. Frank's gonna deal with that with any zoning issue, any zoning violation. Respectfully.
And so since the unreasonable application is, if I understand correctly, your position as to why those two provisions under 9759 subdivisions 1 and 4 should apply. I've asked it several ways, so I just want to make sure I understand. Inasmuch as that is your position that it should, would it be incumbent, I'm asking you,
Yeah.
upon you as the applicant and unreasonably obstructing the business, more than just saying you don't see how?
No, I think again, it's a fact-finding discussion for the board to.
Well, that goes back to
Right.
the question where we were asking for more facts, and then you.
Well, I guess what facts need to be, we're happy to, what we can provide, again, this is why I think there should be questions of the neighbor and what the legitimate farming operations are. It's a fact-finding discussion if it's gonna be unreasonable. We've stated our position. I think the board has a responsibility to ask all relevant parties and really get to the truth of, is this an excuse to vex a neighbor with a history of dispute, or is this legitimate, is there a legitimate reason?
But I felt as though you had more questions and we were cut off your role to ask about the dimensions of the fence. I think there was going to be,
Okay.
we would delve into the facts. And
Sure.
you had interrupted with a question of law, but was there
Sure.
anything in particular, or do you want to wait for the public?
No, I think we can, I think I got kind of just like stopped by the hurdle of my own kind of like legal attempt to analyze what is a complicated situation. Y'all understand, I mean, we are bound by the zoning law boards, and these aren't simple. If it is the case that we're not, I think what I was looking, I think wrong, I think, if we are looking at the application of the law in this specific sense, I would want to see, more detail. We can get to that afterwards. I don't necessarily know exactly what those things would even be at this point, aside from like a measurement, a few more photographs, but, yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, understood.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think so.
Why don't we hear from anybody else who has something to weigh in on this project?
Along with the homeowner project.
It's a public meeting, so anybody can speak out there.
Well, I'm Tony LaSpanera, so the 3 trailers that they're talking about are horse trailers. 2 of them are semi-horse trailers that we use to go cross-country.
Tom, good race.
Sorry, can you go?
Tony, sorry.
I'm sorry.
So the 3 trailers that they're talking about are horse rigs. So we use the big trailers to go cross-country, we take a lot of horses. It's very untrue that they haven't, we just came back from Oklahoma. The other thing that's sitting there is a dumpster, and there's wooden fence there and wooden fence posts. That's where I've been storing them since I moved there. So when we were friends, the trailers were there was always trailers parked there. I had bought new trailers, and these are very expensive. These are not junk. These are, the horses that go in these trailers are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as far as what operation I do, so my daughter's she's running 12th in the world, in the reining world. We're breeding horses there. We just had a baby on the farm. And as you all know, agriculture is $10,000 a year, and I do more than that. I own 2 farms. I own this one, the one I live at, and I own the one on Kip Road. And then I own another one in Damascus. So it's unfortunate how things went down. It is what it is. Very much exaggerated on their part. So be it. But listen, I'm here to tell you that my farm, my house is very well kept. I take a lot of pride in it. And I'm letting you guys know that the trailers are staying, the farm is staying. And if they don't like it, move. Because it was there when we talked to each other. As a matter of fact, I used to board their horses at my farm. So it's unfortunate we don't get along anymore. That being said, you know, I talked to Frank about it, and I told him, you know, yes, the truck was there, the septic truck was there, I used it for water last year when it was dry, because my cows were out. And they're all pet cows. But as far as the horse operation goes, we make money on horses. We buy and sell horses. She's down in North Carolina. I have 20 horses down there. I have another 20 horses here. And on Kip Road, there's 40 horses.
So you're saying, Tony, that this is a horse farm, or this is more than a horse farm?
It's more than a horse farm. Yes, we
What
have
other animals
chickens.
do you have there?
I don't know. I think we have 14 cows that are all pet cows. The last one I had butchers, I donated to the food pantry here in Goshen. So this is what I do.
You have chickens and...
We have chickens and we get eggs, yes.
Is there anywhere else you can, I withdraw, you said you weren't gonna move on.
I'm not gonna, let's be,
Shouldn't you be able to ask that question?
here,
I'll
you
ask
can
the
ask the question,
for the sake,
but the
is there
truth be
anywhere else you
known,
could put the trucks?
when they were there before, there was always trailers parked here. This is not something just because I'm mad, and I'm not really mad at Sean and Carrie. They're more mad at me than I am at them. I mean, I happen to like Sean. That being said, I mean, I'm not gonna let the public tell me. I worked hard for this my whole life. They're not, you can come to my place anytime you want. It's a show place. And that's what it is. We have people come there. I just had a baby horse that's worth $100,000 right now. People are flying in from North Carolina to look at this horse. It's not a shithole, by no means. The trailers that are parked that they can see are, when I take them to Las Vegas, these are showpieces. These are not junk.
So I think the question was not whether you're going to move them. I believe the question was, can they be moved elsewhere, right? Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, could I put them up at the top? I do have trailers, I have trailers up at the top of the house, but at the top of the property, that I see from my house. I see these trailers from my house, it's not like I can't see them, I see them.
Tony, just the water truck.
That's one.
You have any other your businesses, business trucks up there?
No.
I know you have a
No.
lot of equipment.
No, I don't.
No tractors, none of your tractors, anything like bulldozers, you don't have anything like that?
Well, I have.
Well, when you do work around the
No,
farm.
no, I have
understand
a
that.
farm dozer there, I have a backhoe there, I have farm tractors there, yes. But that dozer belongs to the farm, the backhoe belongs to the farm, so.
That you're entitled to.
Yeah, it's a legit, I bale hay, I bale my own hay, I mean, we do that, and I sell hay.
I think what legally is like the thing that I'm finding myself trying to discover is if this is, if enforcement of the regulation is not gonna be creating an undue burden on you, then Frank comes, then like that's the first thing I'm trying to assess, right? Frank, if that's the determination, Frank comes in, the way the code is stated is that farm ag related vehicles are an exception. But if they're the horse trailers, they're not necessarily ag, I would at first glance not consider that ag related.
Okay.
And if it's not, and I don't know if this is unduly burdensome or not, I don't know. I need to figure out more to know that. But if that hurdle is surpassed, I do see that code being somewhat clear that the vehicles might not be in the right place. And so I think that frames the legal issue, and I just wanted you to know that that's where I'm going at.
The horse trailers are strictly used and only can be used, they're horse trailers. They're not semi-rigs that you could put, like a big box trailer. They're horse trailers, that's it.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
There was a box trailer, I hear them in the background, there was a box trailer, and there was two of them, matter of fact, and they were both loaded with hay. So when I bale hay, I try to fill up because I have a farm in Damascus, which is an hour away. So instead of using hay wagons, we use semi-trailers. They're not parked there, they're empty. When I emptied them, I took them out of there. But these horse trailers are strictly horse trailers. You can't load them with hay, they're horse stalls inside.
Yeah, I drove by today. I agree with you. It's beautiful. The tower, the whole thing is beautiful.
Where do they go when they're empty?
You're right, I can't put hay in a
I'm
horse
talking
trailer
about where, I'm sorry. You can put hay in a horse trailer, it's.
for the horses, but there's horse
I mean, it's
stalls.
possible to put hay.
My wife's an equine vet. I'm familiar. I get it. But
No, is the trailer, when it's full of hay, it's there. When it's empty, it's moved?
It's moved.
Is there,
There's no box trailers there right now. Well, the only thing that's there right now, there's two semi-horse trailers there,
Yeah.
and there's one horse trailer that you pull behind a pickup truck.
are they parked there because it's easier to fill them in that area? Is that
No,
what-
they're
is
parked
that-
there because it's a level spot. I made a level spot in the property to park them there.
Can you speak more to that?
Excuse me?
Speak more to what you just said, they're parked there because it's a level spot.
It's a level spot. It's down at the bottom. It used to be a barn there, so it's a silo. When we cleaned the property, we found this silo. And that's how we named this farm, Stone Silo Farm. And it's a level spot. We've been parking trailers there since day one. This has not been an issue until we started arguing.
can I inquire with the, because Counselor, the code would really make it hard for him to move the trailers anywhere because it'd have to be unable, you wouldn't have to be able to see it from
No,
the public
the
road.
vehicles need to be 100 feet, farming vehicles just need to be 100 feet back.
I'm reading,
Outdoor storage needs to be screened.
no commercial vehicle exceeding 10,000 pounds with weight of 20 feet in box length shall be parked overnight in a residential district where it is visitable from adjoining property to public roads. So that would be an application to him that would be difficult to achieve because of the nature of the property. You drive past it, you look up the hill, you see the whole thing. I'm just trying to apply the code to the situation.
I think you were getting at two things. One, is that the only level spot on the property? And two, that code says if it's farming-related vehicles, what he's saying with the horse trailers, it has to be 100 feet from the property line.
Where's that, where's that in the code?
That's,
9759B4.
Oh, at the end, at the bottom. Right, but what I'm saying is
those used
that's,
in farming operations be set back 100 feet from the property line.
how far back are they now?
They're probably about 50.
Okay.
So is moving an extra 50 feet, is that unreasonable? That's
So
the-
moving in
that's
an
the-
extra 50 feet, are you gonna tell me you can't see it at 50 more feet? Are we kidding
But
ourselves
that
here?
inquiry,
But I don't think the horse trailers, I don't wanna have this be a wide open comment, but a horse trailer, I know we can put hay in it, but it's not a vehicle used for commercial agriculture.
right, so then it
So then it has to be removed from the,
prohibits the parking of, I didn't write the code, this is the code. Prohibits the parking of commercial vehicles where visible from adjoining properties. We can't just disregard that for one person.
but it impacts the analysis of the unreasonableness, of the undue hardship, what are we talking,
Sure, it's the, shall not be administered, interpreted in a manner that unreasonably restricts or regulates farm operations within the agricultural district.
That's what I'm trying to get
Are
at.
there other places that,
Are there agricultural plates on all these trailers
No.
and horse trailers?
If I had ag plates on them, I could only use them from my farm to the next farm.
Right, I think that's
So
kind
we-
of what.
That's
yeah.
not what they're actually used for, we do go from farm to farm, we go from here to North Carolina,
Yeah.
and then we go from here to Oklahoma, we go to here to Vegas. So the Vegas, Oklahoma, I don't own those properties.
No, of
That's
course,
the
no,
show
I
grounds.
think we need to look at it too in terms of the code, of the, I don't know if it's DMV or what, or vehicles that are not, that are plated in any way. And if they are plated, not having agricultural plates on them, are they considered agricultural vehicles? I think we should look into that.
Well, they're
Make sure.
plated to the farm. They're-
No, I know, but
They're owned by
I think-
Stone Silo Farm.
I think what they meant in the code, I mean, again, I'm going into interpretation here, but I think they were really referring to the basics of agricultural items, like vehicles that don't leave or vehicles that only are utilized in farming. I mean, if anything, a semi could be used for anything, including farming, of course.
Mhm.
But I think we should look into that as a board as to if there's not agricultural plates on it, does that circumvent the issue here?
The-
And if following
These
through on
horse
that,
trailers can only be used for horses.
No, I moved in a horse, I moved my house in a horse trailer, so I know what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah, but
there was
I'm
a
saying
lot-
that's-
There was a lot more room in it, so
Yeah.
I mean, it can be used for other things. But, I mean, again, I wanna make sure of the interpretation that, because that's what we're looking at is an interpretation. Agricultural vehicles should have agricultural plates in my mind, but I don't know enough, because this is the first time this has been in front of us as well. But I would find that to be completely reasonable if the vehicle is agriculture or used in farming between farms, or whatever the case is, that it would be considered an agricultural
so
vehicle.
most farm
Otherwise,
vehicles-
otherwise your personal truck is an agricultural vehicle, because it tows the trailer.
Exactly.
You know-
So, but if I, most of the ag plates that you put on an ag, like, so if you go out to the Black Dirt, for instance, right? A lot of guys have agriculture plates on their farm trucks,
Yeah.
whether they're old army trucks.
Yeah.
So let's be clear, if you're telling me this now, so I can go get a old deuce and a half, put agriculture plates on it.
Well, I'm not telling you to do any of those things.
Well,
It's a piece
I'm
of
just
pie.
saying that.
That's what I'm saying,
That
so-
within reason, I mean, I think the other idea would be if they don't have those and they are commercial vehicles, not agriculture, then they can be parked elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's all we're trying to make sure of. There are obviously options here for us
Mm-hmm.
to not even be here right now at 8:30 on Tuesday evening. That could be fixed pretty quickly. Obviously, I don't think you want them fixed. They do, and now it's up to us to kind of take all of these facts and make a
I
determination.
understood, I'm just saying, just be careful, I don't wanna get hung up on an agriculture plate, because you can't put, I can't put agriculture plates on something that I go over the road with for my horses to another,
Right, and all we're saying is that those vehicles then not fit this and they can be parked elsewhere on 40 acres. And that's all we're trying to get to is, I mean, that's what we have to take all of this, and we're all residents as well, and if we were neighbors, and I want to make sure that we follow the code, but I think these are all, again, obviously, I think both sides here are having some reasonable or unreasonable things, and both of you think that your unreasonable is reasonable and vice versa, and that's for up to us to have this conversation, and we want to protect all of the residents in Goshen, and also the owners of properties and agriculture and things of that nature, so I just think that that's something that I would suggest the board to look into, is that agricultural plate aspect of it. Is that what the initial code was enforced for, is to say, these were the vehicles we meant. And if there's an interpretation, then it's gonna be an opinionated item, but we wanna get as much information as we possibly can in order to make a reasonable decision for both parties. And I digress.
No, it's a good point.
I have one last question. If he pulled them back 50 more feet, are we going home? Are you okay?
With the vehicle piece, right? I mean, that's.
I mean, if you have you move them 50 feet and you bring in Frank, we spray paint a line and go, this is it, are we done? I mean.
With that piece, with the commercial vehicles that,
Is there another piece?
well, there's the storage of items.
Oh, so we're talking about other that
There's
you're.
two pieces.
I understand, all right,
Per the code, there's two pieces.
okay.
Well, the other pieces are, there's fencing, wooden fence, you've seen my fencing, right? It breaks, so we have a pallet full of panels for wooden fencing. And then I have, which have been there since day one. And there's a pallet of post.
We have to break the fence so you can get the spare fence and repair it, and there won't be any more pallets?
So what are we gonna do? Just because somebody complains, we're not doing this.
Well, that's
We're just
kinda-
not doing this.
But I guess to that.
That is the code. I mean,
It is the code. It should be, then you should go to the legislature and say, you need to change the code because it's not a good provision. But you can't just escape the law because it's gonna require you to do something. That's the definition of the law. We live in America, that's the point.
And Council, you mentioned the second piece, on a factual basis here, where does that apply, the second piece?
The second piece is the violation of the outdoor storage provision, which is 9759B1, which requires that outdoor storage be screened from neighboring properties. It's completely visible from the Breeze property.
So your position, move back and screened, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, move back if the board finds that those horse trailers are farming operations, then move them back 100 feet. It doesn't sound like that's gonna unreasonably harm his operations. And then the outdoor storage just need to be screened in accordance with the black letter of the zoning code, that's all.
How hard is that?
Well, that's the question, right? How hard is that?
How hard is that? Right, how hard is that?
That's incumbent upon the applicant to demonstrate.
Right, and I think we've said our piece, and we don't need to keep belaboring it, but
Tell me, you can move your pallets and your vehicle, and we can go home, we can go watch the Yankee game.
You go. I could.
You could.
I'm not going to. Thank you very much.
It's an open meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other people want to speak on this topic tonight? We just open and close this public hearing. Couldn't seem like there's any need to keep it open.
Everybody spoke.
Yes, I can still work a couple of people.
Okay,
So
so,
we want to though, keep it open for like information, like,
oh, because I think.
I don't wanna belabor our boards.
Yeah, we can still ask questions to them next time we meet if we're gonna vote. We can still
Yeah.
ask questions.
Yeah, so let's move to close the public hearing, and we can move this on, okay?
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
In-
Close the public hearing, excuse
Public
me.
hearing,
Yep.
do we have a second? Second. 10 seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, this will be back on the agenda for next meeting. Discuss and, possibly, take a look at it. All right?
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And can I add something, or is it, can I just add, if there's more inquiry, I would just ask the board, submit to us, submit to, like, if there's other fact-finding things, let's get that done so we can be all prepared at the next meeting to discuss and be on the same page with the same facts.
If they have any other questions, what I'll do is the board will email me and I'll send it to the
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have items for discussion and action on Three Valley View Road, 17256. Applicant submitted a site plan to fix a 14 by 20-foot shed with an 18-foot yard setback. The requirements of 30-foot minimum. Applicant is seeking an area variance from the encroachment. There's a draft decision, but neither of these, and 349 Maple, came to us in time for us to review them and actually go on those decisions tonight. So, in fact, I didn't get, I forget now which one, I don't think I got 349 Maple. No, I got that one, I didn't get 3 Valley View Road at all. So I'll need those. Just in the future, I can't get these things on a day.
I will let her know.
It's gotta be time to look at it. It's just not. I can't put my original email at work at this point, so.
Understood. I will let Mr. Green know that.
Thank you. All right, so the next meeting is on May 20th. Are there, what's our agenda?
Yeah, I do.
What's that?
We're talking about the 3 Valley View, well, there's 2, there's the next month, maybe.
To vote on the decision.
And I don't think you were here, Bob, so I don't know if you were part of it. The draft had our, encapsulated our vote.
Yeah. No, you probably can't.
We're 3-2 on that one.
Draft, we already made it.
I'm just saying, I can't vote. All right, so, do we have a motion to, is there anything else?
No, so I'm just gonna go over your next, so your next agenda will have 6 and 8 Elmwood as a continuation public hearing.
Okay.
And then items for discussion, 2 Fairways coming back, which was the solar, the ground mounted solar. Okay. A new application to Jessica Court, everything new you guys have in front of you. I'll also email everything tomorrow, because some of them were sent to me electronically, so I can scan them. To Jessica Court, which was literally just dropped off to me today. Gotham Properties for 288 variance. I'll send that over to you, and then you'll have everything.
Is there full agenda? Is there anything we can do with Dunwood in the event that they don't make the next public hearing? In terms, like, is there?
They adjourned with Rory, so I'm not really sure what is
Okay.
happening with that.
It's really tough to have, you know, I just.
Yeah, we're trying to get loaded meetings, because folks aren't coming and pulling back, coming and pulling back. I mean, even the 2 Fairview, you know, again, it's making it a little challenging. So we'll see what happens.
So, and I resent the minutes out. And did you, James, just text or email me? I don't know what you said the first time that you sent.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was 6 Dunwood, and it just says, Kenneth Bainhart said, and it was.
Okay. All right.
Okay, good, so, good?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Did you make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Sam?
Sam.
Same sentence?
Sam, second.
All in favor?